Well, photography to me is everything I see essentially. I'm always on the lookout for photographs, and my life wouldn't be the same if I didn't have photography in it. I think just whenever I'm looking, I'm always looking out for potential subjects. I'm always basically got an eye out, and I think that's just come because I've been so ingrained in photography for such a long time. It's sort of how I see the world now. I see it in pictures or potential pictures. That's really exciting, and I think I see things differently than people who aren't photographers, and I think that's quite exciting.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. You've sent me 3 photographs, and I could see the thumbnails, and they're quite abstract.
Yeah.
So I love that of your body of work. That's what you've sent me, and I am going to put some screenshots from your. I think I have 2 websites of yours. Is that right?
Yeah, you can see why I wanted to send you more than 3 photographs now, can't you?
Yeah. But listen, but in a way, what would happen if we only had one photograph, right? Like if this one image, I think you and I would still have a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go on to the next photo, which is it's so good, so good. Okay, so okay. So in the image you sent me, you've actually put a white frame around it, or it's like the file or image actually has a white frame.
Okay.
So it just heightens the fact that it's more of an abstraction or an abstract sort of image or whatever it is. When I look at it, there is again, there's no frame of reference.
Yeah.
If the other image you could sort of see was a door with the slats and everything, here there is nothing recognizable. It's these very kind of futuristic, almost textured. It's this blue black splotches and splashes, and on it, it seems to be these. I don't know if it's on a white background or if it's white plaster that's been scratched. Like it's really, I mean, this is like looking at an abstract painting. But what am I looking at?
I assume this is the one with the pink in it.
No, this has no pink. This is only black, blue, white.
Black, blue, and white.
Is it blue? It's more like navy blue. It's really dark. It's
Oh,
like this is.
I see. Yeah. So that is, I think that was in Tayo as well. So I think that is that's the one of a canoe. So it's actually an old canoe,
Okay.
and I think that's the right one.
A very close cropped image of. Is it paint? I don't know if it's like scratched off paint or.
Is it like the splodgy sort of black and white one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it looks like almost like he's like a drip painting slash some. Yeah. I mean.
Okay, so I do know which one it is. Okay, so this photograph I took in Chesil Beach, which is in Dorset in England,
Oh,
and
okay.
and what it's amazing where you find these things. And water is something for me that I always gravitate towards because erosion and weathering happens much more quickly. So I usually go there to try and find these abstracts.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is actually a seat that has come off a dinghy. So it was in a boat essentially, and the seat that you sit on, that is what this is. It's like a close up
Mm.
of that.
Wow.
And what I loved about it is that again, there's no frame of reference at all. You would never know that was a seat.
This is your image, and we were like, "What is this of? I don't know. What is this of?"
It's abstract. It's abstract, man.
It's awesome. I
Exactly.
love it.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a seat, and just again, it's done in exactly the same way. It is taken directly above it, and what I like about it is that it's just the shapes are there. There's composition in it. It's not just a random
Hmm.
shot of it. You've got a subject, which is that bit in the middle, and then you've got it all framed around with the black splodges.
Again, so for people who are listening, how do they get a frame of reference from how we're talking about it, and it's very difficult, right?
Oh,
And
really?
so, and in a way, but here's the thing. Okay, as you're talking and as I'm looking and as you know, our brains can't help but create these like connections.
Yeah,
I see what looks like I mean, it's like looking at a cloud, I guess. I see what looks like a kind of a samurai warrior. Look, there's this Japanese feeling to the composition where
yeah,
there's like, it's like a Japanese warrior powering through like a blizzard, and within the dark patches, which is not quite black, and it's quite on the blue side,
mm,
it's got this really interesting texture, which which is photographic, and maybe a mechanical process in painting could create this, but it does not look like an organic texture. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to convey what you're saying.
I should get you to write my captions. Yeah, that's cool. The whole thing, it's all done by accident, and that this splodge is just from where someone's been, painting tar or painting something on the boat that has splodged onto the seat, and then
Uh huh.
someone else has scraped it. That could have been a year later.
Yeah.
So the whole thing has its story. We just don't know what the story is, and
Right.
that what's so interesting about it is that you've just come up with essentially some splodges on a fishing boat as a samurai going through a snowstorm, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of thing that I'm trying to do. I want people to make their own story up, and that's what's really
Right.
cool.
And again, printed like 1.5 meters by 1 meter or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Nice.
essentially, it's if you think about having a room that is, let's say, completely white, and you just want splashes of color or splashes of texture. That's what it's for. And you can either go with, I don't really care what story it has. I really like it as an image,
Mm-hmm.
and you just put it up in your room, or you have the different type of person who like loves to read into the images,
Yeah.
and that's both ways are just equally as exciting to me. And when I take it, I don't see the story, I don't see any of that. All I'm seeing is composition and
Mm-hmm.
and texture, and where am I going to place my image, and technically I need to do X and Y in order to get this perfect.
How Where have you had your okay? So, what's the largest that you've printed your images? What's the
So
largest size?
my largest size is 130 centimeters. It
Okay,
can go bigger, but I haven't found anywhere or anyone who wants to have a
right.
print than that. Because essentially you need to mount it and then frame it. So once you've done that, it's huge.
Uh
Um,
huh. Uh huh.
but they can go so big.
Okay, so where have you only shown or had these purchased, or have your photographs only been alive in the UK, or where in the world are your pictures?
Yeah, so my pictures are all over the world. Actually, there's some people in France. I've got some people in London, Hong Kong. Lots of people from Hong Kong want the images because they've got a connection
Yeah.
um, to Hong Kong. So I actually have got a Hong Kong gallery
Oh, okay.
because I've photographed in Hong Kong quite a lot, and it's
Right.
usually the people who've got some sort of connection to Hong Kong who love the images there. And what's that's when I realised that people want something more than abstract, especially
Yeah.
with photography.
Okay.
So that's, I think, what made me want to tell the stories behind the images,
Right.
and to tell people what they are. Most of them are not in glamorous places. That's why initially I didn't want to tell anyone, because
Okay.
the next one we're just about to go on has just all of them. It's essentially you're photographing a seat in a boat,
Right.
and you can't glamorize that really. So you want to, either keep it a secret because the subject isn't very interesting. But what
Uh
I
huh.
found out is that actually just the travel to these places, and and not the actual thing, but the place itself is interesting. So like Chesil Beach or Hong Kong, you can talk about Tayo and how amazing Tayo is, rather than going,
Right.
this is a bit of a fire hydrant in.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So okay, so I love that sometimes things happen that you can't anticipate and you're just like, "What? That's kind of random." I love the randomness.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be another one of my really like long meandering sort of questions. So you try to figure the question out, okay? I leave it I'm putting the onus on you. So I did this photo project where I did 350 photographs, right? Like more or less self portraits.
Yeah.
And I was putting them up on eBay to sell.
Oh, cool.
And what was really weird was not that, well, it was weird that I was putting up self portraits on eBay, but what
Yeah.
was weird was that people from around the world would buy them, right?
Yeah.
And I'd meet some random people, like somebody from Hungary or somebody from Australia or whatever, who'd buy the photo.
In Hong Kong.
Well, it was over the span of 6.5 years, so I was a little bit all over, but I was based in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So the question is, here's the question.
Here we go.
So in doing these images and in showing them and in everything, has it happened that somebody pipes up and says, "Hey, you know what? I really resonate with what you've just done. I want this." And all of a sudden you have a connection with somebody you would have never anticipated. Is there somebody who stands out, in your photographic history where who's really connected with your work and who's come from the other side of the world or wherever that you thought, how did that make it there?
Well, I think there's lots of expats that come from Hong Kong or have some sort of connection in Hong Kong. I think that's the key to selling the images, is that they actually are from Hong Kong and they are of something specific. So it is a piece of Hong Kong essentially,
Mm-hmm.
rather than an abstract artist who've gone. It's not really of anything. It's of their. It's abstract. It's nothing essentially. It's what they've created, and I think what differs with my work and their work is that mine is abstract, but it is of a specific thing. It does exist, and I think taking a piece of Hong Kong back with you is something quite special.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, like, don't you feel that what's really fascinating about your work though is that, like, as we're talking about this right now, we're having this conversation, and as we're speaking, I'm looking at your photo, and it's got this dark comic sort of aesthetic that I'm sort of reading into it, and in a way that opens it up for you to kind of have it be, it sort of transcends Hong Kong in a way.
Yeah,
And granted, I guess maybe the people who do end up buying it are the people who can connect it to something more
yeah,
localized. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I think that's when the sort of the abstract comes together with something less abstract. Having that story behind it to sort of trigger things like they might have been to Tayo and go, oh, do you know what's really nice, but I don't want a landscape of Tayo, but just having this piece of Tayo is and something abstract that fits on their wall or with their color scheme. That's what I think the type of people who purchase the prints.
Okay. So in your training, have you done a lot of like art history, art theory, art, like, can you anchor it in some kind of tradition of art, or do you feel like that's outside of what you normally think about?
Yeah, well, not really. I I'm doing something that is very photograph. To me, it's very photographic. So I'm essentially, I like the colors. I see the composition. There's nothing that really like resonates in me. There's nothing more than that when I'm taking the photograph. I just
Mm-hmm.
love that the composition, and I've
Mm-hmm.
always been like that. I'm quite matter of fact. So I go, oh, I like that, and then people go, oh,
Okay.
why do you like that? I was like, I don't know. I like the reds and the greens and the yellows, I suppose.
Right.
But it's nothing more than that. I don't know if it should be. uh,
No, well, look, it's just how
yeah,
it manifests, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's not up to me. And the good thing about abstract is that even if I think it it looks like a samurai going through a snowstorm, someone else won't think that. So it doesn't matter
Hmm.
what I think. I just take the image, and I like it for whatever reasons I have, and then hopefully they'll like it, but
What
maybe for other reasons.
What's cool about the podcast is that because it reflects kind of my, I don't know, kind of random, like, oh, you're it's like in terms of how we met was just completely random.
Yeah,
And hopefully I can get your sister on, who I don't think I've ever met your sister,
yeah,
but you're describing before how you have this YouTube channel show where you're going around the world talking to people with film. Is it, were there cars involved as well? Because in a way, you're going and you're still making photographic records, even though they're video.
yeah.
So that seems to be more. I mean, do you feel video is let? You can't really get too abstract with video because then it gets too I don't know, conceptual or whatever. But how does the storytelling, the visual storytelling that you need to use in video, like, do you think that these abstractions, like these abstract photographs, are just your way of saying, okay, this is a different part of my brain?
Maybe, yeah. I think I know I've always photographed landscape photography, and it's just been I've just focused more and more on things. I don't know. There's something about, I wouldn't want a landscape photograph on my wall, even though I love that place
Hmm.
and I love taking it. For some reason, I don't really want it on my wall. I'd much prefer to have some art on my wall, but I would also like to have something photographic, as in photographic art. And I
Right.
essentially, it's more about being able to put splashes of color within a space. I think
Right.
that's what I liked most about it, and how I can achieve that is by then photographing these abstracts, and then essentially they become generic, but also not generic because they now got a story behind them.
Uh huh.
And
And to be fair, I mean, like, completely unique because you I would never see anything like this anywhere ever, right?
yeah, they're
So
quite odd, aren't they?
yeah.
I've whenever I'm taking them, I always feel quite self conscious because you get people walking past and like, what the hell is he doing? And I'm like, on the ground sorting out my tripod, and then photographing this corner of a door. And
Yeah.
if I was that other person, I would think I was mental as well. What is he doing? But what makes me feel better is that I'm creating something I'm really passionate about, and I know it'll look cool. So
Nice.
I sort of try and get them out of my head because I know exactly what I would be thinking if I was them.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but yeah, it's what I really enjoy.
So what's the website that people can go see your other work?
So my other website is jeaphotography.co.uk.
Okay.
So this one is jeaphotography.com. But I thought I needed two websites because they're just so different.
Okay.
Because my abstract work is, it's just so different to photographing a wedding. I
Yeah.
don't think you'd get the same sort of person who'd want to, and maybe you would. I just don't know. I just think it's nice to put it separately.
Well, I okay. So let's. We're going to go to your next photograph, but before we do that, let me just kind of ask you a couple. Okay, so like I've done professional photography, and I
Mm,
know that when you're doing that side, and you're hired to come up with certain images and everything, the client, whatever, has a vision that may or may not be clear in their mind of what they want, and
yeah,
you're there as somebody who fulfills that vision as you know, like it's sometimes for better or worse. You give them what they want, and it's not necessarily something that you even connect
yes,
with or
exactly.
feel, you
Yeah,
know.
you obviously have been a professional photographer.
But so then on the other hand, you have this other, and I can understand. Well, you want to have this other kind of channel where you can show your different work,
Yeah,
and
the
that's
creative channel, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah. So that makes perfectly good sense. But the issue is that when we're having this conversation, I've been looking at this image the whole time, and it begs it like in my mind everything, even the most abstract, even the most sort of absurd, arbitrary, whatever thing. I mean, the very fact that you've put it on the table to say, well, that's what I'm going to pull out of the world to say, like that's what I want to show, is a reflection of your internal thinking, your internal thought patterns. It's a reflection of your education, a
Yeah,
reflection of your all this stuff. So it's interesting and fascinating that of all the kind of image making that you've kind of matured into has been to create these highly non-literal
yeah.
uh, images that qualify as photographs, but really they don't really signify anything.
No.
So, what kind of person are you that, like, how do you feel about uncertainty and chaos and lack of clarity in your life outside of your work?
Yeah,
That's a question.
that is. I think I'm quite a simple person, and I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I'm essentially. I don't think about all of those things.
Okay.
This has no like doesn't manifest into what I think at all. If you look at the next image, it'll be really bright and completely different.
Well, you know what? Let's use that as the segue for the next image.
Nice.
Shall we?
Yeah.
So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting